Good afternoon. I think as you find your seats and come forward, we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Lisa Kipp, and I serve as one of the pastors at Zumber Lutheran in Rochester, and am honored to sit up here with all of these bishops and representatives of the churches of our companion synods. And so I can't help but recall what Bishop Steve said earlier today, that you can't help but be changed by relationships that are sustained in these global partnerships. And that has certainly been the case for me. And so our hope is that over the course of this next hour, you will get a chance to hear some of the stories of the ministry that is happening in each of our companion synods and dioceses, and that you might strengthen some old relationships that you have, or look forward to forming some new partnerships. So, Bishop Steve, we're going to start with you. You have visited each of our companion synods in Colombia and Tanzania and South Sudan. So what have been your observations?
It's been delightful to visit those places. Colombia, what I've really noticed is participation of the community in the ministries of the church there, and how that helps to sustain those. Tanzania, it's really focused on education and seeing the difference it's making in the lives of those students. And South Sudan, just a tremendous sense of resilience in the midst of challenges. In other words, I've really seen in each of those places them being the hands and feet of Christ.
So, Pastor Benyam and Bishop Alex and Bishop Atahualpa, could you share with those of us one of the important and tangible ways that you see your church being the hands and feet of Christ in your setting?
Well, I didn't want to go ahead of my bishop here, so being a polite African, I just had to keep that. Today I've been working with South Sudan, so I don't consider myself an expert. There are South Sudanese brothers and sisters here who may be able to speak more about South Sudan, but I'm just gonna give it a shot here. What is important about South Sudan? And one of the things that I was asked several times, why South Sudan? Why at this time? Why do we have to get involved in South Sudan, especially when there is war raging, conflict raging? Why should we? And my response is in a way of questioning that question is why not? This is one thing I learned over the last several years. I worked for Global Mission and worked for work in South Sudan. One thing I learned, the first thing is to see my brothers and sisters in South Sudan, as Jesus said, as you did it to one of the least of this, who are, the New Revised Standard Version says, one of those who are members of the family of the King Christ. That is the people. And one thing I started to see was just looking at them, what would Jesus do? How would he react? And to see Christ in that small baby, or the woman that is having some difficulty. And so the woman that is not able to have a proper place to birth her baby, women and children, those who are dying not knowing why they are dying. So I found that to be very important. So that is how we got involved in South Sudan. Of course, before ELCA did, or any of us did, this synod was involved in it. And if I have any problem in South Sudan, the people I would blame would be this synod, who always got on my back, and what do you do? And we were really we didn't think would be accomplishing much. But together, we were able to do the way I look at it. I'll speak on that tomorrow. We were able to do a miracle. We were able to see bringing community together. And when people say, why don't we wait until the country is at peace? When the country is at peace, they don't need us. It is now that we are needed. When there is a crisis, when there is a death, that is where we are needed. And that is exactly what we are doing together as a church.
Thank you. Bishop Alex, I've seen firsthand many of the ways your church is making a difference.
Yeah, in our setting in Tanzania, many of the families, for we a family is more not a nuclear family, it's an extended family. And nowadays, it is easy to find a family living with one parent, either mother or father there. The rate of divorce is increasing or separation. So as a result, you find a single parent remaining with these children there at her home or his home. And these children, they find that they have little to feed themselves. Or sometimes they are used to go and beg there and bring it at home. Now, in most of our towns and cities, we have so many of the growing number, we call it street children. Some of these, because both the students, Makumira and Kiombo, they did research. They find out that most of these children, they are coming in from the families where they have, the marriage have broken. So the parents are living single. So what they do is to leave the home, and then they go to the town or to the city to find the way of living. As a result, they just become a street children there. But not only those, but also because of HIV, AIDS, the parents, all of them, they've died, so the number of orphans are increasing. So these children, what we did as a church now is we opened centers whereby you can collect them from the town and you put them at the center. For instance, where I stay, Bishop's compound there in Kititimo in Singida, we have a center there whereby we put them there, then you feed them, then you register them, you send them to school. Otherwise, they never even go to school. So this is the most important thing which we are doing as a church, as a hand to help these people. But not only that, as I said, in Africa, most of the family is not a nuclear family, but it is an extended family. But it happens also sometimes that within that extended family, the close relatives are just maybe few or two. And we don't have like you here, when you're grown up, even if you are rich, your children are rich, you are sent to the house for old people. But in Africa, it's not like that. So we have, like in one particular village, I went there to lay foundation for a house. The church decided to build a house for that old people. These people are so old. They have their son is old and blind, cannot see. So all of they depend support. And unfortunately, not necessarily that being part of the member. And for these particular people, were even not member of our church. So the church do support things like this to the community, to the people who are in need. Even during Christmas time or Easter, when we celebrate Christmas, so people go to the prisons or to the people who are really vulnerable in the society, so that also they can share what they have. They buy clothes, soap, and the food, so that even them, they can feel really today is Christmas, if it is Christmas, or if it is Easter. So the church does such things, regardless that not necessarily they belong to a member, no, just because they are human beings, they are within our society. So as a church, we witness Christ by doing such things to our members of the community around us. Thank you.
Asante. Bishop Bata.
In my opinion, one of the most important ways that the church is learning to be hands and the feet of Jesus is through the reconciliation. And I say that we are learning because we don't know everything. We are learning with the community, with the society. And maybe as you know, some months ago, as Colombians, we have a election about the peace process and they vote yes or not. And many of the people vote against the process peace. And when you think about that, you maybe think Colombians are very crazy because how long are you in violence? And when you have the opportunity to say yes to the agreements, you vote against the agreements. But I think that as a society, we are for many years in war. We are for many years in violence. And therefore, we need to learn about the reconciliation, about the way through via another society. And when I say that we are learning, is because, as a church, we have also a lot of challenge about the position, about the polarization in the church. And I think that we share with the society this situation, and when we live with the communities, with the society, and feel that it's the same challenge for in the whole country, but also in the churches, live in this way. I feel that this is a big opportunity to learn about how we can, through the Bible, through our theology, learn about like reconciliation. And I think that this is one of the most important ways to be the feet and the hands in Jesus.
Thank you. In all of our churches and all of our countries, including the U.S., we are faced with many challenges. And so I've asked each of you to think of what is one of the greatest challenges that your church faces in your country?
Okay, I'm starting? Okay, thank you. And I'm senior bishop after all. In my setting, as Bishop Steve has said, education for my church is the first priority. Of course, also healing. That means medicine and the dispensary running. But not only in our church, but in our society, in Tanzania society in general. And this should extend to all Africa in particular. Education is so important. So the most challenge we face, and I can say I face, is on training. Training in the sense that when you train someone to a higher education, to a higher level, expecting that after graduating to a much higher level, he or she will come back and help the other one. But unfortunately, you find some of the people who are being trained, they disappear. You don't get them. So this is a challenge, because when you prepare staff, you're expecting this to take over, to run the institution, educate to the others, and you don't get this. So we continue being depending or asking, oh, please, can you come and teach us? Can you come and teach us? This is a biggest challenge. And this one, I feel it will continue us. When will we achieve development? Achieve sustainable development and self-reliance in such a way. We always don't have enough manpower. But the church always, maybe we get grants through LMC sometimes, then you send and the Christian contribute there, you send there, or other society send there. Then after people graduating, they don't like to turn back. So this is a great challenge. So that they can come and help others, train, and so that we can continue developing. So we remain training, but people don't turn back to work to their community, to their church, or to their society. Then you try to find another way to train others. Maybe few can come, and others disappear. So this is a great challenge. We'll continue depending, which this actually will hinder us. When are we going to achieve sustainable development and self-reliance on that aspect? So to me, I can say that you American, maybe you can say it was okay, because I used to hear in the past, not now, and not maybe after September 11, but in the backwards there, I used to hear most of the people around the globe, when they come here, they get higher education. Then they remain here. They don't like to go back to their home. This is a big problem. You should have to tell them to go back. Otherwise, what are you going to do then? With these countries, they will continue remaining begging for you. When they will achieve self-development and self-reliance? When? Sustainable development. You have to tell them. I was studying, I was studying in Denmark, Copenhagen. One guy, we were living together in the same apartment. He told me, coming from Africa and Tanzania, he tried to give me stories how the government of Denmark has been investing, going to Africa, at least giving scholarship to the people trained in Copenhagen on Denmark institutions, then hoping that they'll go back to their country and bring development. But people, they just disappear. This is a big problem. I think we have to find, especially you also, who are here, you have to support us that, please, you have got education, now you go back, help your people there. Otherwise, we'll continue with this poverty cycle. This is, I say, the secret of poverty is continue going around the cycle. So you cannot break that cycle because we remain only depending like that way. So this is the big challenge to me, I feel, and I think, which is facing us as a society, as a country, also as my church.
Thank you very much. Others?
Thank you, Bishop. The brain drain, I also work with many other countries. Brain drain in the continent is a major issue, which I really agree. If you asked me this question about a year ago, I would say many other, I would have kind of listed differently. I'm going to start with one thing right now, just where I am, how I'm thinking over the last few months, or probably about a year almost. Let me say this first, I'm fascinated about just saying this idea of being a church. Together, us as a church, what we are able to accomplish, what we are able to do. But at the same time, every now and then, we have this crippling fear that we look around and say, how can we do this? This is too much. And we sometimes as a church, we give up before we get off our chair to reach out, to do the work. And I'm kind of hoping some of the challenge is, for me, as I look at the different places, when I look at South Sudan, people, where do we start? How much can we do? Can we make a difference at all? It kind of feels like the wolf standing on the cliff and howling at the moon and say, have we made any dent yet? Have we made any impact yet? For me, that is not what it is. We can make impact, but we have to be together. And this is not about South Sudan or US or Tanzania or anywhere else. This is about becoming a church, and why did God call us? Why God put us in this place at this time? And we have a purpose. I've learned when I look at the faces of those children and women, men, and I see there is a purpose why a person like me, given this opportunity to work on behalf of this church, why I'm working in South Sudan, because God has called us to do this. It's not a choice. This is not a choice. This is who we are, because we have brothers and sisters out there that we have to work with and with each other. So for me, the challenge is to, at times, to motivate people, just to say, yes, we can do it. Yes, we can change. We can transform. With God's help, I really don't see why we cannot. And sometimes some people say, this is the one that gets under my skin every now and then. Sorry if I say that. It's not preaching, so I can say that. Is we are a dying church. Have you heard that before? And to tell the truth, I don't want to die with my hands tied behind my back. I want to die running. And I think the God who started the good work in our life in South Sudan, in you, will complete this work with us. We have to get up. We have to run. Challenging people, young people, older people. When I read the book, the big book, it says your women, young girls will see visions, and old men will dream dreams. I said, there's no place for retirement. That's what he's saying. And that's what the book says. We all have roles. We can change the world. I want to change the world. I want to change the world that is upside down. I want to help make it the right side up. That is my hope. That is what we can do. But I don't want to die. I don't want to sit there and look at certain things, be afraid. And we have to take a risk. Cannot do anything without risk. Business people in here, I'm not a businessman. You got to take a risk. We take risk. But the risk, we don't take any dumb risk, but we have to do it, a calculated risk in a positive way, which God Almighty would enable us to do. For me, the challenge is to sit there and complain about what we cannot do, which I believe we should be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I don't think the Juba Center would be at all where it is today if there weren't some risks that people have been willing to take. Thank you for leading that. Bishop Atta, challenges that you face in your church.
As a church in Colombia, I think that we share some of the challenges that you are mentioned, but I would like to remark one that I am thinking is how connect the people in the churches with the community. I mean, for many years in Colombia, we have made diaconal ministry through the office to the professional teams and to the people who works very excellent. But sometimes I feel that the church think that this is just the work for others. This is the work for the staff. This is the work for the office. This is the work for the professional people. And I dream with a church that is more connected with his context. With, as a church in Colombia, we have a lot of churches. And when I say a lot of churches, it's not true here in the Lutheran land of Minnesota. I think that many of our churches are located in the countryside of our country of Colombia. And I dream with churches more connected with his community, with his context. And for me, it's a big challenge because sometimes the people feel that it's like a club, like we are in a bumble, and we are Lutherans, and the other is just people with another faith or with our faith. And as you know, in Colombia, almost 85% is Catholic. Therefore, if you are Lutherans, you feel like you are in a bumble and you are maybe in a club, very, very private club. Is just for a little people. But I feel that we need more connection, even if, as Bishop Alex mentioned, even if they don't, we don't serve because they are Lutherans or because they can be Lutherans, just because these people in need. I think that one of the biggest challenges in my church is connect more the people in church with the community around his life.
Thank you. Bishop Steve.
Ready to echo what Bishop Otto said. To quote Presiding Bishop Eaton, we are not church for the sake of the church. We are church for the sake of the world. And I think the biggest challenge that faces us here in Minnesota and in America is connecting with the communities in which our congregations are located. And that means taking the time to get to know our communities, to recognize the changing face of the people in our communities. And you have to get outside the walls for that to happen. And the ones who have to lead it are the leaders, the rostered leaders and the lay leaders of congregations. That's many of you who are here today. It's finding out what are the needs in the community and then coming together and talking about how can we help to meet those needs in the name of Christ. We are church together for the sake of the world, not the church.
Thank you. I think one of the hopes is that our global partnerships together with one another will help us meet these challenges alongside one another. And so we're trying to think deeply, I think, here in the U.S. and in our companion synods about what it means to be in accompaniment ministry together. There's been a shift from an older paradigm when it was the global north churches giving financially to the global south churches. And we're trying to shift some of that so that there's more mutuality in our accompaniment. So as we work and live into that, what is your dream for how our churches might accompany one another?
Yeah, thank you. I'll come in. I would like to echo Bishop Steve when you say we are a church for the globe. This, I think, is very good, and this is very important, even for the Bible study. That's we are a one church. And even this, the vision John saw there, it was a church, one church. He didn't saw the church from Southeastern Minnesota Synod, a church from Tanzania. It was a church for all believers gathering there with all their tribes and nation and settler and the races. Now, for me, we in the Central Diocese, my dream for how this accompaniment ministry can happen between our churches. In Mark, Jesus pointed the three important things, the gospel, when he was commissioned the disciples. Proclamation of the gospel, healing, and teaching, education. My dream on the side of healing, medicine, with all challenges and the problems we are facing, I feel if we deal with this aspect of medicine, people having enough medicine, if enough medicine, this means you'll hit, we used to say, one stone hit two bells at the same time. You will never have orphans. People will be healed. We will have good health. We will reduce the number of orphans, those who are suffering. And if we have clean and safe water, also, this will have a society of people with health. So you don't think much of using a lot of money on treating the people from different diseases, because most of the disease in Africa comes through the water we use, contaminated water. Now, my dream is this accompaniment. If we being one church, with one faith, we have health institution in Tanzania for the church, hospital, dispensaries. If you will accompany us, and good luck that God has blessed you so that you become a blessing to other people. We build medical industries. I think it will solve many problems connected to the human, sickness, etc., and etc. Because for we in Tanzania, the government cannot offer all sufficient health services. Almost 40% of the health services which are run in Tanzania owned by the churches, and 60% by the government. But still, they are not enough altogether. What I'm trying to say is that presently, up to this time, the medicine needed for the whole country, 96% we import. And only 4% is we get it from our industry local there. And the government also has announced, even asked us, which churches, if we can speak with our brothers and sisters within our globe, you can build industries there for medicine. And this medicine, instead of importing there, will be accompanying within our institution, not only for our church-owned hospital and dispensaries, but also even for others who are within our country. I think this is my major concern, or reflected that now we can shift. Instead of, let's say, asking, Southeastern Minnesota Synod, can you support us funds so that we can, the funds for, we can have a little bit income for farmers, but increase our ability to buy medicine for, instead of asking funds now and then, why can't we have an industry for that particular case? In Tanzania, through our partners, either collaborating with, the church can provide you the place, you can build the factory for that particular issue, and then we have medicine, which will be very helpful by accompanying we in giving services, health services to our people, to their community. Secondly, I've mentioned about clean and safe water. Really, even here I was told, here if you open the tap, you can just drink the water is clean. But not in Tanzania. Not in Tanzania. You do that, you get diarrhea and typhoid and many other things will accompany you. So if also, you can accompany us to have this clean and safe water, we will appreciate very much. And I think this will be doing a great and a big ministry and our globe for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think that one of the ways that we can change this paradigm of North and South is relation not just institution by institution, but from the people. I mean, when we can do relation face to face, people to people, church to churches, I think that this is really a powerful skill to change this paradigm, especially because when you share with the people, with the family, with the churches, his realities, his challenge, his opportunities, his abilities, it is possible to feel and to, we say it in Spanish, I don't know if that makes sense, feeling the shoes to the another person. I mean, walk with the shoes with another person. And I think that this is just possible when you establish this relation directly, church by church, person by person. And I appreciate so much the times that bishops did and another person, Kathy, Schottelein, and another groups has visited us, because it's this opportunity. And also I appreciate so much the opportunity to come to Minnesota and see the life of the churches and see how the churches face the challenge that you have here. But I think that one of the issues that can be changed, this paradigm, is this relation with the person. When I think in the relation of the Southeast Minnesota and Colombia, and especially when I think in the missionary who come from Minnesota, if you have a little time in the hall of the stand, in each country have a stand, there is a small video about the history of the church in Colombia, and two of the missionaries who started the church in Colombia was from Southeast Minnesota, and were two women that, in the logic of the human being, that is impossible, because some years ago, at that time when the church was started, was a very different situation in Colombia with many conflict in political and religious issues. And two women go to Colombia and travel through a very, very difficult road and proclaim in this part of the world the gospel. I mean, it's crazy, but these women and other people made this relation, and through this relation, the church grown, and the church can itself proclaim the gospel. And I think that to change a little this paradigm of the North and the South is necessary. Come back to this relation, to this opportunity to share the same challenge, to live together, to work together. And I think that this is one of the things that we can do.
Thank you. Okay.
Forget one thing, because I talked only on the side of the health. Now the question of education. I would like also, in accompaniment of this education, if we can focus to strengthen our institution there in our global partners, I think it would be more helpful to empower them to have this education, and this education will help to have more stronger manpower for evangelism and for also teachers in teaching. For instance, yesterday we visited St. Olaf College, and I asked the student during our lunchtime meal there, then they told me the fees for one student per year there is $56,000 US. This is for us. Oh, I said, oh, how is it? For we, just 3,000. per year. A student can get a good education at a university level. So if we can accompany us, let's say our Savior Lutheran Church built one classroom, First Christ Lutheran Church, we built a dormitory for women, and etc. etc. And it does not cost even much comparing to here in your context. You can think, to build a classroom, that will be too much dollar. No, in our context, does not reach to that level, you can think. So even building this classroom or dormitory for women, because women now are coming up. We are empowering and we're encouraging them to go to school, not just to wait to get married. The society is changing. We are on the same globe. Development is everywhere. So if we can accompany us, you can accompany us also on this aspect of education, strengthening our education institutions. I think it will be very helpful, rather than just to ask, can you give us scholarship for 2 students here? Can you support this one? We'll continue seeking that way. Years and years, and then Christ will find out we have not finished all the rest, what we wanted to do. I would ask you to accompany us, strengthening our existing institution on capital development. That will be more important.
Thank you, Bishop Alex. Pastor Benyam, how do you dream of accompaniment ministry working between our churches?
Well, first, I have 2 college kids, student boys. Could you please adopt them, take them, so I don't have to pay that tuition? It's just outrageous sometimes, and I'm in a crisis, That's why I'm asking you. As we discuss, some years ago, we talked about, you remember, mission field. You remember that language. We go plant church. The reason for the paradigm shift to accompaniment is churches are already established. We don't plant churches anymore because we're not going to teach Tanzania how to plant churches anymore. There's so much has been done. The past history, a lot of good work have been done. But now we are shifting into a kind of different direction, different ministry. How can we collaborate? How do we work together? What is the best in the other? Yes, when you talk about resources, I still believe we do have a whole lot of resource out here. That's true. We cannot deny that. And I'm also looking at it, and as I kind of continue, as I kind of get older and get working with so many churches and around here and out there, what I'm seeing is getting involved. Number one, what we do is not just about the resource. It's not only about the money part. Even if we're speaking about the resource, and I believe, and when I go and speak to certain churches, congregations, I'm not a good fundraiser, and so I don't ask them to give money to this, to whatever project. I'm not good at it. All I'm saying is, I give you the privilege of giving. Can you look at giving as a privilege? That's what Paul talked about, the privilege of giving to the ministry of the Church of Jesus Christ. And within the idea of accompaniment, it is time, I think it's already we're doing those, to look at what resources are available on the other side. What do we learn from our brothers and sisters? Not just to make it kind of fancy and nice, but really, what can we get from there? Accompaniment is as we walk together We have to hold conversation. We hold conversation. We speak to one another and see what the other person is lacking or what the other person has and can share. Not when we talk about resource, if we focus only on the giving, the money part, we will kind of miss out on the other aspect of the skills that have developed, other resources that are available, deposited in the mind and the heart and the ministry of our companion churches and our congregations and friends and other pastors that are out there. So it is time that not coming from the power point of view and having fund or providing, now we're giving. And I'm just moving away from the giving aspect and talk about the privilege of serving Christ through the knowledge, the resource that we have, the life that we have. How can we sit down and talk about the kingdom of God? How can we grow that kingdom? How do we reach out? And how do we look at that child and say, I see Christ that is hungry in the face of this child? And we have that here in Minneapolis area here, and we have everything. But how can we learn and develop and go through that sort of restoration of community that unique and unified God's people and God's community? That kind of restoration, that is what I really see in accompaniment.
Thank you. Bishop Steve, your dreams.
So you talk about the cost of college. I always said that there are three major expenses for parents in the life of each of their children: dental work, college, and marriage, weddings. I've done all three of those for all three of my kids, so I'm past that. I now have more to give away. For my simple definition of accompaniment is two or more people walking together and sharing their stories. And I think back to the second time I went to Tanzania, and on a nighttime ride from the airport with Bishop Alex, and sharing stories of some of the challenges that we faced in our settings. I remember the last time I was in Colombia, shortly after Bishop Ada had been elected, riding together in the back seat, crunched together in a taxi cab, and again, talking about some of the challenges that he faced as a new bishop, and some of the things that I struggled with. For me, that's still the essence of accompaniment, is people sharing their stories with one another and growing in their understanding of one another, and then talking together about how can we best do this together. And then to go back to the finances, as a pastor in a congregation, the first time that I went to visit our partner church in Tanzania, I took along this bundle of money and gave $3,000 or $5,000 to the congregation, and only later realized how that caused great inequity. So that congregation maybe gets $3,000, the congregation in the next town gets $500, and the congregation in the next town gets nothing. And so we've really changed all of that here in the Synod so that money goes towards education or health care, but those decisions are made in conversation with the bishop and the leadership team in those churches. They identify what the priorities are, and then we talk about how we can work to meet those priorities. And one of my greatest learnings from our companions has been around hospitality. These folks do hospitality in a way that we're not even close. In Tanzania, Sudan, Colombia, sitting around a dinner table for a long time, just getting to know each other. And even sometimes sitting around a dinner table with a bunch of leaders, getting to know each other while all the people are sitting in the church waiting for the worship service to start. So the hospitality piece has just been enormous. And just last night, just some really great conversation with Pastor Benyam about the work that we share there in South Sudan and talking about how do we best move ahead with that very, very important work. And listening to some of his stories, I can't stop weeping when I hear some of the stories of the ways that we're making a difference. That's what accompaniment about.
Thank you. You know, we have just a few more minutes, but Pastor Benyam, I'm wondering if maybe you could share maybe a couple of those stories of the growth and what you're seeing happening in and through the Juba Center in South Sudan.
My supervisor said at Chicago, I was about to say something on South Sudan. Somebody asked, and he said, "Please don't make him speak. I will speak." He said he would speak because if I start speaking, I want to stop. And I say, "Thank you. That feels so good." And it is true. What makes South Sudan, the program, very special was, number one, it wasn't done by one person. That's a collection of people. All the resource people, ideas, views, this synod, congregation within this synod, other synods in this area, global health ministry, and everybody came together. That is where I am kind of moving forward with. We are the church for the sake of the world, and we can change the world, whether we like it or not. That is the way it is. And I hope you agree with me. And in South Sudan, one of this exciting thing, we put together this program. On the 16th of November, the inauguration took place. And we haven't started yet. The plan is to start somewhere in January, February. We have not hired doctors totally, not nurses. We don't have equipment. Just arrived, and we just put them in from Global Health Ministry. Program hasn't started. And after this celebration, the following day, I went back there. There comes a lady with 3 children. Now there's a clinic. I said, we haven't started this yet. What do we do? But even if it wasn't there, we had to do it somewhere else. Now, this family came with the hope that now there's a clinic. She didn't care. Whether we had something or not, she doesn't know. But there's a clinic. It says so up there. It's written. But we had to do something. We were forced to do something, whether we like it or not. What a gift. And about 4 weeks ago, I was in Juba. We're not set up to do delivery, not yet at least. But we have nurses and midwives and doctors. We refer those women to the hospital, and we take them there every now and then. Then now there's a clinic, and the lady came. And she came, and they have to take her and check her out. She's ready to deliver. There's no time to drive her to the hospital. And we went out there and said, she's in labor. And then the next time I know, within half hour, there's a baby boy in that clinic. That's not the best part. The baby boy was named Benyam. And I had the picture to prove. I have the birth certificate to prove. You might even see it tomorrow. You never know. And it was a celebration. life came to the world. And the following day, I came back to the center. We were in a meeting. And after we finished the meeting at 8:30, and somebody said, you know, last night a woman came. What time? I said, morning, 4:30 a.m. But I said, it says we're open only from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. It didn't matter to her whether we're closed or not. But the only thing that troubled me was she did not know. All she knew was there is a clinic. She probably don't even read. Then I say, what happened? Only the guard saw her. She came with her mom right in front of the gate. She gave birth and picked up her baby and went home. I just say, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to think of it. She gave birth. You know, somebody I remembered, a person who didn't have a place to be born. You all know him. That is what came to me. And I asked the doctor and the drivers, she must be in this neighborhood. Can you go search for her? Did she do well? Is the baby okay? And they went and looked around the neighborhood. They found her. They brought her. And she was checked. Everything went well. And then after that, the baby was received all the necessary vaccination. And the family was given the package for the newborn from Global Health Ministry. And out of guilt, I say, can you give her 2 instead of 1? Can you give? I don't know what I could have done. We're not set up, we're new. But at least there was a place for her. She came. And since then, there are more people coming. Women are coming, giving birth there. When you look at it, with God's help, you and I, Global Mission, other synods, congregations, made it happen. Gave a place where they can come to, thinking that at least there is a place. And that is what I found to be exciting in this work, in this ministry. Just to see a child coming, being born. What was amazing, just in the same place, one was born surrounded by nurses and doctors, right there in less than 24 hours. Another one gave birth with no one there except her mother, and then picked up her baby and went home. The disparity of our world, that is where you and I find ourselves. And a question I always have is, what is Christ saying to me when he puts me in that? That's all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you for your stories, and thank you to all of you for the ways that you partner with each of these churches. Let us pray as we go forth. God, thank you for these partners in ministry that sit beside me. God, work in and among and through each of us that we may create places where life can be brought into this world in your name in holy and sacred ways. Lord, bless our journeys, bless our churches, bless our companionship. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you very much.